Welcome everyone. This is Judit Ward, Science Reference and Instruction Librarian from Rutgers Libraries, New Brunswick. I'm a reference and instruction librarian in charge of sciences, but also with a strong humanities background. I have a master's in literature, PhD in linguistics, and then 20 years teaching experience, communication and foreign languages in a medical school, and then also 10 years as a director of information services at the Rutgers Center of Alcohol Studies. Currently, I also run a fun reading program at New Brunswick Libraries, which gave me the opportunity to teach library research in a much more enjoyable way. Library of Congress call numbers, subject headings, or holdings. These sound equally uninteresting and uninspiring for students and for instructors when I'm teaching the same content over and over. You know what I'm talking about. Today, I'll show you a few ideas that we tried in the past 2 years, which seem to be more engaging for our students in the online learning environment. Not only me, but my colleague, Nick Allred, who's going to introduce himself in a second. And as we said before, if we have network connectivity issues, we may just turn off the video. So, Nick?
All right, thank you, Judit. So, as Judit said, my name is Nick Allred. I actually just defended a week ago my dissertation in the English department at Rutgers. So Judit and I began collaborating many years ago. My first year of graduate school at Rutgers, I was ordering an Easy Borrow book from, thank you, Krista. I was ordering an Easy Borrow book to Alexander Library, and I noticed right before that in the drop-down menu, an alcohol library. And I was interested in alcohol and literature as my dissertation topic. And so I dropped in, and the rest is history. And Judit and I have been collaborating both on alcohol history as well as instructional library outreach ever since. And that's given me the opportunity to get involved in books we read. And in addition to the programs that you're about to hear about today, I've also been teaching while I've been at Rutgers in both the literature and in the writing program. And so I was able to bring some instructional expertise of my own to running this recreational reading program. Right. And as Judit will get started telling you about the Books We Read program, and I'll just drop a link to that into the chat.
Thank you,
all right,
Nick.
Looks like that went through. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So welcome to Books We Read, an old-fashioned library practice turned into a 21st century project. Books We Read evolved at the Chang Science Library around the goal to pass on our passion for reading and our commitment to intellectual curiosity. We discovered that books on the shelves of academic libraries can also serve diverse purposes for our students, other than just reading for classes, writing papers, and citing scholarly resources. Ultimately, the goal of the project is to equip students with knowledge about library resources and empower them to ask for help. Our partnership with the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences and their social media helped drive over 25,000 page views of this site that Nick just put a link in the chat since we added Google Analytics in March 2020, right around the pandemic, when the pandemic started, to this page. So just note the date, exactly when Rutgers switched to remote learning. Today, we would like to show you how Books We Read has proven a successful tool to build connections and communities while teaching libraries research skills and promoting library resources and services. Students confirmed during their library sessions and visits that most of them read in their spare time. Actually, some of them read a lot. The large variety of books, topics, genres, languages that Rutgers students read never fails to surprise us. We all have our different reasons and excuses to read, as this short poem illustrates in the image. As librarians call it, recreational reading books have become an important part of the collection in academic libraries, whether separated from the main collection or integrated into the collection and shelved with other titles. The Chang Library also hosts so-called drop-in resume reviews, one-on-one, partnering with the Office of Career Exploration and Success. And this question, what's the last book you read, is very popular at job interviews, just to find out about the candidate as a person. And I believe we all agree that none since high school is not an inspiring answer. We make sure that our students realize that it's never too early to start preparing for that job interview. I keep mentioning the Chang Science Library. For those of you unfamiliar with the complex system of Rutgers University libraries, Chang is that small library on the Cook campus. It can be found in Foran Hall, behind IFNH, the newer building with that great restaurant, Harvest, that we can't wait to reopen. Inside the library, it's basically just one large space equipped with everything that other bigger libraries have. The giant glass windows provide ample light in the semicircle room. New furniture was recently purchased to make the library more appealing after the shelves had been removed and the books were relocated to storage buildings. Chang serves mostly SEBS and NJIS, and to some extent sciences on this bank of the Raritan in New Brunswick, with me as the single science librarian assigned to the library. The campus atmosphere on Cook is also different from other larger campuses. Everything is within walking distance, and one can just bump into people they know all the time, unlike on College Avenue or on the Bush campus. But let me tell you what we found out from our users, the students. So a little bit of background. In the spring of 2018, the Chang Library was the focus of a semester-long class assignment for a group of 44 undergraduate students in that course called Social and Cultural Aspects of Design, taught by Laura Lawson, professor and dean, and Holly Nelson, associate professor of practice at the Department of Landscape Architecture. As described in the syllabus, this course aims to engage students in the complex relationship of people and the environment. During the semester, faculty and staff in New Brunswick Libraries assisted undergraduates with background information on past and current library practices. Students had site visits, observation sessions, and we also had a couple of classroom presentations. It was an outstanding opportunity for the students and also the library to mutually engage with their communities. With the wealth of data, interpretation, assessment, and reflections, the project was really, really rewarding for students and equally valuable for us at New Brunswick Libraries. One thing that the course participants seemed to agree was the unique character of Chang and how it's different from Rutgers libraries. Some of the features include the location in the heart of the Cook campus, close to classrooms, academic buildings, and the Harvest that I mentioned, the affiliation, the library for a single school, and a sense of ownership by its users and staff also, as well as the user population, among them a lot of commuters. Now, listed among the opportunities was also an expansion of activities such as educational, entertaining, and competitive events. So this is how the Chang Outreach Program was born, inspired by students, bringing under one umbrella many different initiatives organized by us, hosted by us, or in partnership with various SEBS groups and units. In my library instruction sessions, which can be a bit dry and borderline boring for students, I often try to engage them through books and reading. When I asked to create a citation for a favorite book, the top choice was Harry Potter. So we began promoting recreational reading and information literacy hand in hand through events in the physical library. The Books We Read program officially began in the fall of 2019 with a marathon reading of Harry Potter in Chang, a full day reading of Harry Potter, as a partnership among New Brunswick Libraries, the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, SEBS International Office, and the two student groups, Rutgers Reads and Muggle Mayhem. Yes, we serve butterbeer too, the non-alcoholic version. Moreover, our graduate assistant, Jenny Kaufman from the School of Communication and Information, who is also a chemistry ABD, even used her skills to create fake butterbeer. I've been using this image ever since to promote the library's virtual reference services such as chats and email. Fake or real obviously refer to a teaching moment in information literacy. For a start, here's a curated resource from the libraries to help asynchronous online learning. We at the libraries have this fantastic tool called LibGuides. There are research guides in a discipline or on a topic, or course guides, technical guides, such as how to manage citations, you name it, we have it. There are over 880 LibGuides available at libguides.rutgers.edu. Check it out. But how useful are they if no one knows about them? We do show related guides in library classes. They are also integrated in Canvas if the instructor enables the Rutgers Libraries tab. So creating these fun reading guides was another way to promote reading and library resources. As you see, we started with Books We Read in print, and over the years, we added some new guides to the pool, covering new areas and topics or meeting new needs, such as with Summer Tales, as you will hear about that a little bit later. So if you are getting bored, I recommend to click on this link that Nick put in the chat and find a guide of your interest, or you can do it later after this presentation. So let's go on with Books We Read, which site since August 2019, this program grew into a very serious project. So just to keep everything in place, I created this site, which is hosted on the Rutgers WordPress site, and I created the gorutgers.edu customized link. So both links, what Nick put in the one that Nick put in the chat and the one on the slide, they both take you to the same Rutgers WordPress site. So this originally it had just a couple of tabs, a blog, and we added some social media outlets such as Facebook and Twitter. You can see the little links in the top. To develop and curate content, at the beginning I had two partners. The aforementioned Jenny Kaufman, a graduate assistant from the School of Communication and Information. She also helped me with library instruction and programming. And the second helper was Nick Allred, as a graduate specialist, a PhD candidate at that time at the English department. And as he mentioned, we've been working together since 2015. He was also my assistant for the Reading for Recovery project, a very similar project at the now defunct Rutgers Center of Alcohol Studies Library. By the way, that project was funded by the American Library Association for 2 years and pretty much laid down the foundation of Books We Read in so many ways. But let's go back for a second to pre-COVID times when we all were still on campus. So other than the book-related offerings and the LibGuides, The whole project infiltrated into my library instruction, and I'll show you some examples later. We also co-hosted monthly science cafes. These are public discussions led by SEBS professors on scientific subjects of popular interest, pictured here. Many of them moved online, of course, in March 2020. With an unfortunate timing, in hindsight, we also launched the SEBS Littlefield Library in February 2020 in Foran Hall as a collaboration with various SEBS units. The library was shut promptly down in mid-March. If you are not familiar with the concept, the Littlefield Libraries movement is a network of free and easily accessible book exchanges. It was established in 2009 in Wisconsin with a mission of promoting literacy and the love of reading and building a sense of community. At the Center of Alcohol Studies, we also had one in the shape of the first alcometer that was developed at the center. So, as everything else, the SEBS Littlefield Library also went virtual during the pandemic under the Books We Read umbrella and offered ample Corona reads and tips to find more online to keep this project alive until we returned to campus. Interestingly, this self-service free physical book exchange in Foran never stopped working during the pandemic. Even if the building was locked down and we were not in the building, it continued to work. So the past 2 years brought both an unprecedented challenge and a unique opportunity to reinvent Books We Read as Books We Read Online. In early March of 2020, people found themselves stuck at home, their normal routines of work and leisure upended by the coronavirus pandemic and the efforts to mitigate its spread. So we just thought that our program has a prescription for the isolation and anxiety of social distancing, a good book. Statistics from our similar initiatives at the Rutgers Center of Alcohol Studies Library, that I mentioned before, the Reading for Recovery, these already indicated the possible application of guided reading in difficult times. Books We Read also draws on this experience while scaling up from the specific issues around addiction and recovery to the wide range of needs people may have in a global pandemic. Whatever Rutgers community members are looking for in a book, the Books We Read site aims to help them find it. Our mission to promote recreational reading had to become less reliant on physical spaces and in-person gathering. A blog post on March 8th with the title Books in the Time of Corona marks the beginning of the new initiative, highlighting ebook and audiobook resources available online. After that first post, we continued to add content and boosted social media presence. The resources tab, resources page, was completely redesigned to reflect new needs, now offering recreational reading and more from Rutgers resources and beyond, such as ebooks, audiobooks, and videos. We created a special tab and page for Cook faculty and staff called Cook Reads, and another one for students called Rugrat, Rutgers University Groups Reading Alone Together. It's Nick's idea. I really love that. In addition to this silly acronym, this captures the paradoxical promise of reading at a time like this. Reading is one of the oldest and most effective ways to be alone without feeling alone. This is our top page, the most visited page. Because as a librarian, I was also working in our virtual reference programs, the 24-hour email-based Ask a Librarian and the instant messaging type chat reference. I had very direct and very detailed information about the changing information needs in the online-only environment, responding to the popular demand how to find a particular ebook or newspaper article, and wary of the random, dubious ebook download recommendations popping up on Rutgers related social media mailing lists, we added a few pages on how to find electronic resources from Rutgers University Libraries with a net ID. Highlighting ebook resources allowed us to showcase the comprehensive LibGuide to electronic resources and also newspaper access. The same demand inspired us to incorporate media outside of books, increasing the visibility of the remote resources that Rutgers libraries have to offer for both instruction and fun. Patrons may be surprised to hear that Rutgers allows remote access to some video resources, such as Swank or Canopy. Our pages explain how to find them. No matter the platform, the Books We Read project equips the patrons with library resources and empowers them to ask for help. Shortly after that first March 8th post came the project's first recommended reading list for the pandemic. It was called Classics for the Coronavirus. The following weeks have seen more social distancing book recommendations, from public health nonfiction for the curious to travel fiction for those feeling cooped up. These recommendations have tried to balance the different motivations people may have for reading at that time by including texts that deal with disease or isolation, as well as texts that allow for a few hours escape from reality, such as fantasy titles, blind dates with books game, or summer reading with New Jersey topics and authors, as you can see in the entertain and engage type of blog post here. We reached out, or we were found sometimes, by other units and joined forces during the past 2 years. In addition to the partners I've already mentioned, another example is our special collections and university archives. Students with an artistic flair or who simply want to stop reading books for a moment and feel like drawing in them are connected through the Books We Read site to the Color Our Collections page, a project of special collections and university archives. This allows people to print out and color a curated set of images from the library holdings. Coloring archival images and making buttons or magnets from them has been a crowd favorite at in-person library events, and the online link allows users to enjoy this activity from the comfort of their homes. Some of them are wall poster quality, as you can see the two framed on my own wall. In addition to fun and recreation, the site also connects users with potential archival resources for remotely learning. A new page recommending special collection resources links readers to SEBS-specific installments in the Special Collections Archives at Home series, including a video interview. So I'd like to circle back to pre-COVID times and show you what you might have noticed in the background of the Science Cafe picture, the posters on the wall, or better to say, posters of mini posters. These posters were created by mostly first-year SEBS students during a library class as part of their assignment. Actually, two classes, one of them called Academic Mentoring, and the second is called Portals to Academic Success. Nick can put the link to the exercise on the next slide in chat, and you can just follow my explanation about this. So first, what we do is we review a quick search in the classroom or online. The library quick search is a library search engine. So we review it with a couple of functions, such as how to search for specific formats, for example, books or peer-reviewed articles, then how to cite them easily with the built-in citation function, and then how to find out about availability and location. Next, students need to find a book and create a mini poster related to it. They can pick from a few poster templates or in PowerPoint, and they can create their poster with a catchy title, full APA style citation, availability, which is the Library of Congress call number and the library, and then a sentence why they chose this particular book. And finally, they add an image with proper image credits. There are some optional advanced elements, such as adding a QR code or a quote from a book review, everything properly cited. And finally, they are invited to submit their posters, which then we convert into JPEGs. Well, after fixing errors we missed while I and my assistant were working around in the classroom. The best posters are uploaded to the Books We Read site, including the ones the instructor made, because most of them were game and created posters of their own. And Nick already put the link to the galleries. Actually, the Books We Read site has a link to the galleries. So from the LibGuide to the Books We Read galleries, I updated the one galleries with posters that were just created 2 weeks ago for Portals of Academic Success class. It was fun. It was already back in the classroom. It was fun. So so much about the umbrella project Books We Read, and I would like Nick to walk you through another part of it, which is Summer Tales.
Oh, thank you, Judit. So I've just posted the direct link to the gallery as well in the chat, so you can see those posters. But now I want to talk about the Summer Tales program. So building on the success of Books We Read and moving the Books We Read program online, we were approached in the early days of the pandemic by the Division of Continuing Studies about a virtual reading club in the summer of 2020 as a collaboration between New Brunswick Libraries and the Division of Continuing Studies. And it was certainly a daunting challenge, but we were ready in part because of that work that we had done already in an online environment through Books We Read. And we're very grateful for the support that we got from New Brunswick Libraries and Division of Continuing Studies, and especially the latitude that we had to figure out how best to tailor a program to the online environment, which I'll be talking about in a second. So Judit, if you could hit the slide. Thank you. So this is our poll, and I guess I ought to say in advance that, as you might be imagining, this is something of a trick question. The key to success is all of the above: right background and experience, the right content and audience, the right timing and delivery, and the right promotion and visibility. And we found that these were all quite important in making Summer Tales a success in 2020, in the inaugural program, and in the second incarnation in 2022. So what we came up with was a sort of in broad outlines, a series of sessions focused on different texts that would be hosted on the Canvas platform as an elective course, not a course for credit, but we're using the framework of the Canvas course in order to deliver the texts and the support content. And we decided we would have asynchronous online discussions, so topics on the Canvas course where students could weigh in via text, as well as synchronous discussions, right? So live discussions between our participants and with our participants, and live events featuring guest authors. And we were very lucky to be able to bring in some of the authors of the text that we wanted to read. And so we found a great deal of success in 2020 and repeated it in 2021. So our concept was really to create something that we coined the term born virtual, right? A program that was, instead of an imitation of a previous in-person practice, was really tailored for the possibilities of online platforms and what we could do. And so that was what motivated in part things like the combination of asynchronous discussions and live events, right? Something that's possible in that remote environment. So we wanted to build on the past successes that we had had in books we read online, and to create a program that, rather than being an imitation of an in-person sort of reading club or an in-person course, was its own thing and was really tailored with the digital environment in mind from the outset. And so Judit has already introduced the LibGuides, this wonderful resource that the libraries uses. And so we created LibGuides for our short stories in the first session. And what we did was we added various content to these LibGuides, bios of the authors, critical readings, uh, opportunities for further reading, and some questions for suggested discussion. And so this was a way of delivering content about the literary selections, but it was also a way of introducing students to the idea of the LibGuide and to the ways that the library could support their own research or their own academic pursuits. So we really saw this as being two instructional opportunities in one, both introducing students to the specific content of these works that they were reading, and also to the library's information infrastructure and the ways that the library could support their academic pursuits. And so we decided to do short stories in the first session, and short stories and poems in the second year of the program in summer 2021. And we wanted to use short stories and poems because they were bite-sized, right? They were short enough for students to read and to have in front of them as they engage with one another, so that everyone could be literally and figuratively on the same page. And so our criteria for selecting them was that we wanted them to be short, something that was really, easy to hold in the mind all at once, to get a handle on, and also that respected students' busy schedules and the fact they were all doing this voluntarily because of their own interest. And so we also wanted to have a variety of short stories and poems. We had some older ones. I believe we had a F. Scott Fitzgerald short story, so from much earlier in the previous century, and then contemporary short stories and poems as well. And we wanted, especially above all, for them to be both easily accessible for students at any level of literary experience, as well as being deep and layered and rewarding, something that would be easy for students to get into and to engage with, but that would provide an inexhaustible source of conversation, like any of the best literature. And we're very glad that we were able to find works that filled those criteria. And we think the proof of that is really in the discussion that we were able to generate. So, yeah, in uh, telling students how to approach discussing, I was drawing on, and Judith was in her own way as well, on instructional experience. That discussions in the literature classroom at the college or university level are really less about kind of extracting a single message or moral from the text, and more about really building up together a really richer understanding of both what the text is doing or saying and how it's doing that. And so our advice was to start in the discussion with acts of noticing, right? Acts about noticing what a character is doing and why it might seem odd, or noticing how the story is told, right? There jumps in time around a lot, right? Whether it's telling us what's going on in the characters' heads or not. And that these sorts of acts of noticing provide one's peers with an opportunity to reply and weigh in and start building a narrative together as a group. And that's the way to get a really rich and rewarding discussion going. And so to further this kind of discussion, we also provided discussion sheets for each individual story. So setting those principles in motion, we framed open-ended questions about the reading, questions to really get students thinking, not questions that had yes or no answers, but things that could really or get them started on specific moments in the text that would send them back to read it again, and that would perhaps provide a basis for a discussion together as a group. The questions were often ordered in a way that would sort of guide students down a line of thought, but the main focus was to make them as open-ended as possible, right? Rather than sort of imparting a specific message or moral, to really get students to fully appreciate the text, reread it, and find new things about it, to really unlock that depth that we had talked about as being one of our most important criteria for our selection. And so the asynchronous discussions were really they were fascinating to observe and to participate in. We couldn't tell in advance which topics and questions would capture students' attention, but many of them got really interesting conversations going, and the students were responding to one another. And I think that was one of the most heartening things that we saw, that students were really engaging not only with the text, but with what each other were saying about it. And so we also would weigh in occasionally in these discussions, but at a certain point, we found that the students were replying to one another, and the conversation was going on independently of us. And one of the really successful outgrowths of this program on the fly was the reading suggestion exchange. So as we were having these discussions about the text, students were recommending works to one another that they had enjoyed. And so we decided to create a whole other forum for a reading suggestion exchange, so that students could share with one another, what was the best thing you read recently? What would you recommend to someone else, and how? And we really got students to buy in, to participate, and it became a really wonderful source of peer-to-peer recommendations. And I've even written a few titles down for myself from ones that they suggested. We also had an additional component. We had a creative contest for creative works based on the short stories and poems that we've been reading. And so that could be in the form of text. We had students writing their own poems or essays, about very short essays about the works. We also had image and video contests. And so we got some really wonderful entries, and we posted the winners on our site with the author's permission. And so that was the asynchronous discussion I talked about. And then we also had a live discussion component. In that first summer, we did that through a platform called Big Blue Button. It's similar to Zoom or WebEx, but slightly different. Like all of these platforms, there was a learning curve, but once we got used to it, we came to really appreciate Big Blue Button. And we're a little sad to switch over to Zoom, as that became the more standard outlet. But in these discussions, we had a mixture of planned activities, things like polls, like you see on the slide in front of you, some instructional opportunities, some instructional activities, or showing students more about the library and what it could do for them, as well as a more free-flowing conversation or a seminar-style discussion of the work. And we definitely had more students in the asynchronous discussion than in the live discussion. We had a lot of people coming and going through the asynchronous, and in the live, it was really the core participants, a lot of those who had been the most active in the asynchronous discussion, who joined us for the live events as well. And we also found that the students gravitated towards toward multiple modalities, that some students preferred speaking up via voice, some preferred text chat, and sometimes they would even switch between the two. And we thought that it was perfectly fine however they chose to participate, that we were trying to encourage participation as much as possible, and that these conversations really went on very well, sort of linked together but in parallel, the voice and text chat conversations. And so we were pretty pleased with how the live events came together across these sort of different modalities. And then we also had live events with guest authors. And we were very fortunate that we brought in some of the authors of the text that we had been reading. So we had read in the first summer Joyce Carol Oates' short story, Where is Here? And we were able to bring in Dr. Oates herself. And she has been a distinguished visiting professor at Rutgers, as well as many other places, and is one of the foremost fiction authors of our time. And in the summer of 2022, we brought in Carmen Maria Machado, a writer of short stories and memoir, and Natalie Díaz, a poet, who, after we invited her, but before the event, won a Pulitzer Prize. And so we were very glad to see that, but not surprised. Felt like we knew how to pick them. So we really were able to pick authors who were fantastic literary authors whose work would also really connect with students, and felt very lucky that they were willing to join us, and very vindicated as well by the quality of the conversation we were able to get going. We collected audience questions, but because these events had so many participants, even from outside the Summer Tales core audience, had people from all over the university, we had to screen the questions in advance. Rather than have the kind of a chaotic hand raising across 200 Zoom boxes. And so we curated these questions, and then I conducted a discussion with each of the authors, drawing on the questions that we had submitted from the audience, both talking about the specific work that we had discussed in Summer Tales, and more generally about their writing process, their literary career, and or some of their broader thoughts that our audience were interested in.
Thank you, Nick. And Nick is very modest because he was the moderator for all three discussions, and we have large numbers of people coming in, and Nick was an equal partner to these famous authors. Thanks to Rutgers Summer Session, who were able to work out the logistics. Of course, it was not our job. So in the last couple of minutes that we have, I would like to point out our social media presence. Jenny Kaufman, our graduate assistant, was the one who created some of these, or helped me create and keep it alive. SEBS Library on Facebook, which we also shared with the Rutgers Summer Winter Session, and this is actually one of the poems that was sent into the poetry contest. Then we also had a Twitter account. As you see, we use this for promotion. It was a great opportunity for us to share all this content, promote, and advertise our programs, share the opportunities with the help of our partners that whom I mentioned before. We were talking about earlier to share you with some numbers, the imprints and impressions and shares. I'm not going to go into that. For another presentation, I started to create this list of all platform software, hardware, and stuff that we used, and then we just ran out of space on the slide. But I was just thinking I should show this slide to illustrate how complicated the project was. So as we started, we knew that this was a time to experiment, to fail and fail better. We learned so much from Summer Tales and books we read in terms of teaching and learning in the online environment. Even if we felt like fighting the proverbial windmills, all in all, we consider our project pretty successful. And many elements are continued to date, either in the original form, modified, or slightly repurposed, or tailored to the evolving needs of our students. An important takeaway for us is that we managed to create an optional outreach project, something that falls into the nice to have category, and then turned it into an online program during the pandemic. and then integrated parts of it into the core missions of the libraries through using this funnel element for teaching information literacy and library research. And we believe that Rutgers students benefit from our relaxed approach and comforting educational tools. And finally, I would like to give credit to everyone who has been contributing to Books We Read. Nick, can you help me out with
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Well,
it's a long list.
Yeah, it's a long list, and we have our time is steadily running out, but it really takes a village, and so we wanted to make sure to thank uh, Crystal and Ladau and the whole team at the Division of Continuing Studies who supported this project, as well as D. Magnoni, New Brunswick Libraries, and SEBS partners. And we also wanted to identify some of the people who had worked on this with us during the 2 summers of 2020 and 2021. Library graduate assistants Jenny Kaufman, Harmony Birch, and Alyssa Renales, and librarians Megan Lotz, Stephanie Bartz, Becky Diamond, and Meredith Parker. And again, there are many names that we could thank, and also Jaqueef Fullwood today for facilitating us on this platform. And so really, it's taken a village to bring this together, and we're very glad to be able to share the results with you today.
We are open to questions for the remaining couple of minutes or later.
Yeah, you can, if you have a question, you can type it into the chat. Please, the session chat, not the event chat, or use the Q&A.
Well, we hope we can check, you guys can check out our links. So the Books We Read site on the Rutgers WordPress site. Also, I can just recommend the LibGuides at rutgers.edu site. And the other links that we post regularly in blogs. So I can see a question, the access to the Canvas site you explained. So I think what I mentioned was that if you are an instructor, in the left panel in Canvas, you can add the Rutgers Libraries button. And depending on your course, it will take you a course-specific LibGuide, or a department, or a topic, or a campus-specific LibGuide. If you are unhappy with that guide, then you can contact your liaison librarian, depending on your campus, and we can make modifications so that you have the correct LibGuide in your Canvas course. I created several course guides, and I have to add the course code on my end into the LibGuide in order to the guide to show up in Canvas. I hope this answers your question. All right, just contact your librarian. Any other questions? Well, if not, then thank you everyone for attending. Bye, everyone.
Take care.